a production of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Visit us at mesachamber.org.
Congressman Greg Stanton was the Phoenix mayor from 2012 to 2018, and he prides himself on bipartisan support on many of the accomplishments he had there. He also is a strong participant in transportation issues and is currently a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Judiciary Committee, excuse me, in Washington, and we've asked him to address some of those issues here this morning. He's got about 10 minutes worth of presentation, and then he'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A, and I'll leave it to you and Andrew. Is that a good segue? You ready to go? Okay.
Ready. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, it's great to be here bright and early on a Friday. I got in late last night from Washington, D.C., so no place I'd rather be the next morning than with you guys. That's why I got my coffee here with me. So great to see you, Joan, Sally, the government affairs team from Mesa Chamber, council member, see you there. And I see my friend Jack Sellers. Let me just start right there with Jack. I believe me, the work that you are doing is being paid close attention to in Washington, D.C. It is very unfortunate, the very bad reputation that Arizona is getting in Washington, D.C. because of in my opinion, ridiculous audit that's going on at Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And it's really important for Arizona's reputation nationally that we don't do things like this. And unfortunately, this is really a very big black eye for my colleagues around the country. I get asked about it all the time. And I just want to say to Supervisor Sellers, we really appreciate you pushing back the way you are. That is making a big difference back in Washington, people noticing that Republican leaders are willing to stand up and say the honest truth about what happened with the election, regardless of whether you like who won or didn't like who won. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with building the community's confidence in our elections. And voting rights issues are really, really important. But the county ran the election well. There is no doubt about that. And so I just want to say, Jack, thank you for stepping up and doing that, because I'm sure it's taken a big toll on you and the other members, the other supervisors, and the other, particularly Republicans, who have stepped up and done it. It's really an admirable thing. So I want to say thank you for that. Sadly, we had other bad news. It didn't get much attention, but it does deserve talking about, and that is, man, did Arizona blow the census? And that census is really important. We had the lowest rate of return compared to our expected population growth in the entire United States of America. And as a result, because we underperformed more than any other state in the country, we are not going to get a 10th congressional district. And over that next decade, we're going to lose out on billions of dollars of federal resources for affordable housing and for homeless dollars and for small business assistance and for education. And it's something that the business community really needs to look in the mirror and say, how do we ensure that this never, ever happens again? I'm working closely with the city of Mesa, Mayor Giles, the whole team over there, to fight for infrastructure projects for the city of Mesa. I'm your partner. I'm going to continue to do that. But we're going to fight these battles over the next decade with one arm tied behind our back, with one less fighter in the field, if you will, by not having a 10th member of our delegation. So for a variety of reasons, I'm really frustrated that the state of Arizona did not put the resources or the plan together to really get out there and get the appropriate census. We are the fastest growing state in the country. We have been. And we should have had a 10th congressional district. Look, Sally, I spoke to this group before. My priorities were, as mayor, and continue to be, infrastructure investment, immigration reform, and improving trade, particularly with our partners in Mexico. That has been my priority. That will be my priority. Now, unfortunately, with this terrible COVID situation, we had to go on a little detour for the last little over a year, but I am proud of what we've done to work with small business in Mesa and throughout the state of Arizona and the entire country to try to do everything we can to support particularly small business throughout this pandemic. We passed 4 bipartisan relief packages when Trump was president. People thought I was crazy among my Democratic friends for supporting those packages because it would make the president look good. But I'm like, I don't care. My point, I got to do what's right for the people of my district and the state of Arizona. So we put 4 relief packages together in a bipartisan way. Obviously, when Joe Biden became president, unfortunately, we were not able to do it in a bipartisan way. So we had to do it with the reconciliation process. But we were able to pass an additional relief package. More than 85,000 Arizona businesses have received emergency pandemic loans. The city of Mesa is receiving $100 million directly in federal assistance that they can use to support the community. Phoenix and Mesa will receive $208 million specifically in transportation funding, $200 million for small business for the State Small Business Credit Initiative Act, $145 million for expanded PPP program, $300 million for the EIDL loans, economic injury disaster loans, $500 million for restaurant assistance, restaurants that have been hammered, particularly our small locally owned restaurants. We all got to get out there and support those restaurants, especially now. But we were trying to provide that assistance, and Save Our Stages Act to support performing theaters like the Nile Theater and other great theaters in the city of Mesa. I mean, even worse than restaurants, the live music industry has gotten hammered, and that is so important to the vitality of our community. So the list goes on and on and on. Okay, now I mentioned advocacy for Mesa and the district. One thing that's changing in Congress is we are going back. We're not calling them earmarks anymore. We're calling them district directed spending, but it's the same darn thing, where I am making specific asks for federal resources in my district, not let the president and his administration decide. I decide what goes into my district because I know it best. It's controversial because earmarks were controversial back in the day, and you remember when Senator McCain and Flake were really critical of them. That's totally fair. There have been significant changes in how we are engaging in this process. Number 1, no for-profit entities can get an earmark. Only cities, state, county, or tribal governments or nonprofits. They're the only ones that can receive a directed spending from a member. 2, I have to be totally transparent. My list of projects is on my website. If you go look at it right now, I have to put my name behind my projects from day one. So in the old days, they used to be able to do it anonymously. We don't do it anonymously anymore. 3, I have to certify that neither myself nor any family member has any business association with any of the projects that I am advocating for. So for example, I'm advocating for Mesa's downtown small business revitalization and rehabilitation program. Mayor Giles and I took a walkabout in downtown Mesa not that long ago, and he talked to me about that program. And it's a really awesome program to better support, especially those small locally owned businesses in Mesa's downtown, including facade improvements. So I'm chasing after direct federal dollars for that. And I do, so to be clear, I do support Congress moving towards member-directed spending, which really is bad that we lost that additional member because we would have had more people advocating for Arizona. But you're going to need members of Congress that are really willing to aggressively chase after resources for our community. Okay, so I serve on, Judiciary Committee. And the reason why I signed up for that committee, it's the Committee of Jurisdiction on Immigration and Immigration Reform. As you know, in Congress, in the House of Representatives that I serve in, we've already passed the Dream and the Promise Act to support our young dreamers. And I know the business community has been super supportive of that. We've also passed the Farm Worker Immigration Bill, which would actually have comprehensive immigration reform in the agricultural world, very important to farmers in the state of Arizona in order for them to help get workforce, which is a huge issue in the agricultural world. That was a bipartisan bill. We got 30 Republicans to support immigration reform in the farm worker space. And I really believe we can use that as a model to finally get comprehensive immigration reform passed through the United States of America. Exactly what Senator Flake and Senator McCain were trying to lead on a decade or so ago. It's time for us to get that done. That'll come through my committee as well. And then I serve on transportation and infrastructure, which means I'm going to be really busy for the next 60 days or so as we put together the largest transportation infrastructure bill in American history. And you better believe I'm going to fight like heck to make sure that Arizona does well in that process. Not just my district, by the way. Since I'm the only member from Arizona, I'm going to make sure that other parts of the state, including our tribal communities, get their fair share of resources. But I'm going to be fighting for I-11, that we finally get funding for I-11. I'm fighting for streetcar investment. I know Mesa and Tempe are going to be partnering on the streetcar, and I need to make sure I'm doing my part to get the resources for the streetcar. Light rail, which obviously, you know, I'm a big advocate of light rail. $100 billion for broadband. That is, it's a hefty price tag, but that is the cost for us to finally get high-speed internet in every neighborhood in our state, including the lowest income neighborhoods. That's what it's going to take to get high speed out to our rural areas and to our tribal communities. And I don't need to tell anyone on this call how important broadband is for education these days. We saw it during this terrible pandemic. For telehealth, you talk to any of our healthcare providers, the telehealth is really the future of healthcare, particularly preventative medicine. If we're actually going to improve preventative medicine, telehealth is going to be a big part of it. And for small business, we want people to be able to open up small businesses out of their home, regardless of what neighborhood you live in, or if you're on the Navajo Nation. We want you to be able to open up. If you got a good business idea, we don't want broadband to be a limiting factor in your ability to open up a small business. And think about this as well. Water. I know Terry Goddard may be next. I don't know if he's on. There I see Terry. You know, the drought that we're dealing with in Arizona is horrific. One of the things we can help with is in getting broadband out to the farming communities so that they can actually advance their technology in terms of looking at, you know, real-time weather conditions, and they can change their watering as a result and maybe use less water. So as we deal with drought, having high-speed internet throughout the state of Arizona is going to be a high priority. Look, we're going to have one heck of a Donnybrook because everybody wants infrastructure. Nobody wants to pay for it. So it's one of those classic cases where we're going to have to put on, you know, our adult clothes, if you will, and have a real conversation about paying for it. The chair of the committee really likes me because I tell him when I was mayor, I put on the ballot new revenue for transportation infrastructure. Phoenix passed a 35-year, $32 billion transportation infrastructure program. And guess what? The voters said yes, overwhelmingly. People like, if they're going to be taxed, they want to be taxed for infrastructure to improve their lives, the quality of their lives, and it's good for our economy. So I want our country to be the leading economy on planet Earth. It ain't going to happen by wishful thinking. We're going to have to invest in education and infrastructure to make it happen, and that's what people generally want their tax dollars to be spent on. On trade, I really work closely with our governor and with in a bipartisan way. With our Republican members. I was kind of an early adopter as a Democrat for the modernized trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, the USMCA. Man, that is going to become more and more important. You know, I don't view China as an enemy at all, but they are our competitor, our economic competitor, and the world is about to change. Our trade policies vis-a-vis China is about to change. We realized during this pandemic, we need to be less reliant on China for supplies. We saw with PPE, you know, I mean, all of it was coming from China. That's why we fell behind with regard to our mask policies across the United States of America. And we've seen it with chip manufacturing. That's why I support the Chip for America Act, and why our community with Intel and now this new Taiwanese company that's building chips in our community. A lot of that has to do with geopolitical factors, that these companies don't want to be over reliant on China. They want to manufacture in the United States. And we're lucky that Arizona, and my district in particular, is one of the key areas in the country for chip manufacturing moving forward. And our partnership with Mexico, viewing our economic relationship with Mexico even more closely as we compete with China is going to be more and more important. So I'm glad that I was able to take a leadership role on that. I was an early adopter as a Democrat. I took a lot of heat for that, but it was the right thing to do. All right, with that, I probably went a little too long. Sorry about that, Sally. But it's early in the morning. I got my coffee. I'm hyped up, and I'm willing to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so very much. Does anyone, and your timing was fine, as long as you want to tell us what's going on, we're happy to listen. So any questions for the Congressman?
Joe and Mark Freeman.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Congressman Stanton, thank you for your overview. That was awesome. As City of Mesa yesterday, we've got $52,700,000 in the bank right now. So we're looking at our infrastructure and our wish list here in the city to help utilize those funding mechanisms you talked about. And we'll also get another 52 million here next year or later on this year. I can't remember the date, but it's all about infrastructure. We're excited for that money to help build out Mesa so much more. And I appreciate your broadband conversation. We talked about that in using some of these monies to create more broadband in some of our lower impoverished neighborhoods, and working with Cox and also CenturyLink in our community. But also, I'm president of Maricopa County Farm Bureau as well, so I'm very interested in the farm workers immigration bill that you talked about, because it's so, I know I'm moving from city stuff to farm stuff, but
it's all good.
But our dairymen and our farmers, man, we need that. I can tell you right now, we need that immigration bill to get that workforce to deliver produce to America. It's just not about Arizona, but it's about America. And we've talked about this before. And thank you for being diligent on that. And then the streetcars and things that we're working with Tempe on is still in the concept phase, but we are working between Riverview and then also Tempe Marketplace and ASU down on the Rio Salado corridor. But again, I'll be quiet and I'll listen to other questions, but thank you for your efforts.
That's great. Thanks for those nice comments. That's great. Look forward to working closely with you on all that stuff.
Councilmember Thompson, anything that you'd like to say? Nope. I think that's a shake of the head.
Well,
Mr.
I
Emmer.
was just going to say, I'm sorry, John. I was just going to say, follow up with Councilmember Freeman. We do have quite a big wish list for the city of Mesa, and the one piece that I was really happy to hear about, and we also heard about it in our public safety committee meeting yesterday as well, was the use of some of those federal funds for mental health, because we have a big mental health crisis going on in Mesa and pretty much across the region. Every state, every city in America has mental health issues. And Mesa is no different. And so I'm glad that our Mesa Fire Medical and PD are looking at standing up a third tier 911 dispatch, where the call taker actually takes the call, triages the call, and then decides whether it's fire, police, or the third, which would be mental health. And then we can roll the mental health professionals out to work with those citizens that are having mental health issues. And so those are the types of funding that we need, Congressman, and thank you so much for fighting for us and allowing us to do innovative things like that at Mesa.
All right. And by the way, don't call it a wish list. It's a needs list.
A needs list. There you go.
Needs.
Absolutely.
Hey, I really appreciate you saying that and bringing up the issue of mental health. Because support for mental health coming out of this pandemic, there's a lot of trauma that people and families and children in particular have gone through. So schools are going to be dealing with this. Law enforcement is going to be dealing with this. Our society is going to be dealing with this. And so making sure that mental health treatment is on par with any other healthcare is critically important. And then, Councilmember, the issue you just brought up, the issue of the interaction between people suffering mental health crisis and law enforcement, which can be an incredibly dangerous situation for both parties involved. I mean, when I was mayor, we had too many cases where there was violence or shooting between, a police officer and someone suffering from mental health because there was a misunderstanding about what the person was going through. A family member had called because of a mental health crisis. The officer shows up and there's a misunderstanding about what violence may or may not be going on inside the home. I think the honest answer is we don't have the right answer on that yet. But we do know that asking police officers to effectively, diagnose somebody in real time as they show up at a home on a mental health crisis, that ain't working. And that is potentially dangerous to that officer as well as the person that they're interacting with. I'm not sure that only sending out mental health professionals in that situation to a potentially dangerous situation is exclusively the right answer. I know some people think that is, the be all end all is just to take the police officers out of the equation and just treat it as a medical situation. If someone's suffering a mental health crisis in which they're a danger to themselves or others, you got to have someone there that can deal with it in as safe a way as possible. So I think the truth is cities like Mesa are going to be experimenting, and we're going to be looking for best practices around the country. But it's part of the reason why when we did the various relief packages, we gave as much flexibility to the cities and the state as possible. So I may be a critic sometimes of how Governor Ducey spent the money on this or that, but I voted for it. I mean, we chose not to put strings on it because we wanted the communities to be able to have as much flexibility as possible. And so Mesa's leadership on that issue is really important.
Thank you very much. And in respect of your time, where are you? Do you have time for one more question?
Oh, this is more fun than anything else I've got going on later today. Yeah.
Well, and thank you for introducing Mr. Goddard. He's waiting there in the wings, and so we appreciate everyone. Mr. Emmert, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Congressman. A thank you, a comment, and a question, real quick.
All right.
Thank you for your advocacy on the streetcar. That's an important project to both the Tempe and Mesa chambers. 2, as the PRO Act, I know you voted for it to get it out of the House and continue the conversation on that particular bill. As it comes back to you from the Senate, we'd like to continue to have conversations with your staff. There are elements of that bill that are concern to the business community. So,
all right, fair enough.
Appreciate your staff being open.
I don't know if it's, I mean, if it comes back from the Senate, we don't know, obviously with the current rules, the way they're set up in the Senate, if it doesn't have the 60 vote threshold, it's not coming back.
Yeah, it might come back to you in pieces. We're starting to hear, but.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah. Okay.
And then thirdly, and this is a hard hitting question. Has Nicole authorized the beard?
I did. So I did have a little bet with my son, and I lost that bet. And so I did, for the first time in my life, grow a beard. Nicole was against it at first, but it's growing on her. So far she's not pushing me to shave the darn thing. I don't know. We'll see. And real quick, I think Jack Sellers had a hand up. I see that too.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mr. Sellers.
Yeah, just a couple of things quickly. One is, Congressman, thank you for your remarks early on about the election stuff that's going on. I guess the thing I was most proud of is Monday when we did our press conference, every elected member in Maricopa County stood with me. So I felt like that was really, really important. The other thing I'll mention to you, and you know this, but my passion is around economic development and infrastructure. And for us to move commerce to support our economy, we need a statewide plan. So you and I will be talking a lot going forward.
All right, I really appreciate that. And again, I know I said at the beginning, but I know you're putting a lot at personal risk and political risk by speaking as strongly and with clarity on what I consider the clown show at Veterans Memorial Coliseum. It's a clown show in terms of how it's being implemented. You know, we saw yesterday now that we have to, I guess, purchase new voting machines that were relatively new and expensive as a result of this. It's a clown show in terms of how they're going about counting. You know, they're making it up as they go along. But most importantly, what they are trying to do is get the American people, not just Maricopa County, because they know this, the world is watching, the rest of the country and the world are watching. They're trying to get Americans to not have confidence in our election system. That is what they are trying to do, is trying to undermine, in, you know, such an important part of American democracy, our elections. And they're willing to lie, destroy reputations. You know, they're willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish that goal. I view it in that, you know, our country is changing. Our state is changing. We're becoming more diverse. Politically, we're changing. We're now a purple state, for better or worse. We're a purple state. And that makes some people really uncomfortable, those changes. And I think that what you're seeing is really a reaction to almost irrational fear of a changing electorate in Arizona and around the country. And my response to those that fear that is, maybe you ought to adopt policies that more people like. And then you can win elections with this new demographic and the changing of America, instead of trying to suppress the vote or get fewer people to participate or lose confidence in our elections. You know, why don't actually like adopt public policies that you can get the majority of people to support you, then you start winning elections. So anyway, but Jack, I really respect you and appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you, everyone. And
All
again,
right.
thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Wow, that you just got in last night. So grateful for your energy and your commitment to.
Thanks, everyone, and good to see you, Terry.
Thank you. Andrew,
Good to
thanks for
see
your
you,
help.
Congressman.
Thank you.
All right.
Very good. Next on our agenda, that was very great. Mr. Goddard, it's so nice to see you. President Goddard from the Central Arizona Water Conservation District Board, elected to a second term in 2018 through 2024, I believe you're committed. You are currently still an attorney. You're with Goddard Law Office, and you also were mayor of Phoenix from 1984 to 1990, and our attorney general from 2003 to 2011. And while you went to Harvard for your BA, happy to say that you are an Arizonan.
Came home.
ASU College of Law, Tucson native, however, and we hear about your hobbies of hiking, gardening, and teaching. You are once in a while published about that as well. So we look forward to hearing from you this morning. Water is also a very big topic these days.
It sure is. And thank you very much for the chance to speak with you for a few minutes this morning and to follow Congressman Stanton, somebody who came after me as mayor, and I was delighted to support him in that effort. And then for a short while, he worked with me in the Attorney General's office. So it's, I'm not so sure I like the Grizzly Adams look. I've got to check with Nicole. I think that was a great question, but I think he's doing a great job for Arizona as a state. On water, let me recognize that this is a very expert audience. And when you have people like Kevin Thompson in the audience, who's the president of the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, and representatives of the agriculture and cattle growing community, I know I'm speaking to folks with a lot of sophistication in this area. What I've been given is what I would call charitably CAP 101, which is a set of slides, and hopefully we can go through those, which basically deal with the basics of the Central Arizona Project. And I apologize in advance that so many of you already know exactly what I'm talking about. You've lived the water, you've walked the water walk for many years, and probably could give this speech in your sleep. But there may be a few in the Mesa Chamber who have not. And so with respect to them, I'm going to go through some of the basics, but I'll do it quickly. If there's something in these slides that I didn't cover that you want to come back to, obviously I'd be delighted. But I assume that since Congressman Stanton ran over, that my time is a little bit constrained. So I will be respectful of that. But let me start out just by saying we're all in a water, let's say, dilemma. I don't want to use the word crisis because Arizona has been very farsighted in the way that it's managed its water. And we know what's coming. We're about to enter a very difficult new phase, but it's not an unexpected new phase. And folks in business and in Mesa in particular don't need to worry that you turn on the tap and it's not going to flow. But having said that, I think it's also very important to emphasize that we are in a very fragile water basin, the Colorado River Basin. That basin has significant reductions in supply based on some miserable winters in the Rockies. So that, as you'll see in a minute in my presentation, Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at incredibly and dangerous low levels. And that's got to be a concern for all of us, because whereas our planning means that the tier 1 shortage that's about to be declared by the Department of Interior, it will not affect businesses in Arizona, not immediately. But we'd be fools if we didn't take the long view and look ahead and say, this is a serious problem and we need to find other ways to bring water to central Arizona. The CAP has been a magnificent straw in the pool, but that straw is about to lose 1/3 of its supply, and that's something we need to be concerned about for the long time. So let me just go quickly through the presentation. Hopefully there'll be something that's new for all of you, but I rather suspect for some it may not be. So here's what we're going to cover. Well, can we go back to that one for a minute? And I think I've already given you a highlight. The facts and figures, what it's all about, the system, which I believe is in peril right now, and how we're dealing with the shortage. So next slide. And the one after that. So here's what we have, and hopefully you all know about it. Mesa has a big frontage in the CAP, but it is a long ditch. It is 336 miles long from Lake Havasu to Tucson. And it brings a critical water supply to central Arizona. I think you see the numbers on the screen. It started in 1985. We've basically been running at absolute flat out full capacity since then. And the result has been we've been able to store a lot of water in central Arizona. And that's given us a very important buffer for what we're facing in the future. Next. Service area, 3 counties, Maricopa, Pinal, Pima. There's a small tax that is assessed on homeowners or property owners in that county, plus the cost of delivering the water upon our customers, which includes cities, 11 tribes, and a large number of agricultural districts. That's a very important customer. Next. And here you see it. Here is how it breaks out in terms of total percentages for various users. The tribal is a little deceptive because most of the tribal water goes for agriculture, although much of it is now being diverted through long-term contracts to cities' future supplies. And the most important one for my talk today is the 17% to Lake Mead. That's been something that we've been planning. We knew that a crisis was coming, and we've been reserving water in Lake Mead to try to hold it off. And we've been, I think, very successful in doing that. Next. Okay, the city of Mesa is a key part, a key customer, a key user of CAP water. You see on the screen, you get your water from the Colorado River, from the SRP, and from groundwater wells, a relatively small amount. What I talked to Mayor Giles about recently was look at the long right-of-way that goes through the city of Mesa that involves the CAP. And one of the things I'm hoping to do as president is to bring a lot more emphasis in our impacted cities to the recreational possibilities of this canal. I think Salt River's done a magnificent job after they saw the light. For a long time, they tried to keep people away from their canal banks. Now they're embracing them. We hope to do the same thing. Although we don't quite own the canals, the The Bureau of Reclamation does. So we have to work on a three-way partnership with the city, the Bureau, and the CAP. But hopefully, Councilman Thompson and others, we can talk aggressively about what Mesa could do. I know Mayor Giles immediately said, wow, we could do a half marathon on that because there's no traffic interruptions because of the canal. And that's an opportunity we need to take advantage of. Next. The facts, I hesitate to use this slide because I think the underlying fact of this fact is that without water, you don't have an economy. And so with water, with the 1.5 million acre feet that CAP has been able to bring to Central Arizona, we produced a really thriving economy. And you all know about it, $2 trillion in total benefit, 1.6 million jobs directly or indirectly related to bringing water to Central Arizona. Unfortunately, the flip side is if we hadn't brought the water in, I think it would be a very different picture. Next. Now the basin, and I want to dwell on this for a minute. Again, I think it's a geography lesson that most of you known since childhood. But here's the facts, and it helps to put the current drought situation into context. Back in 1922, the 7 states in the basin, and you see them there on the screen, got together in Santa Fe, and they drafted the Colorado Compact. A pretty amazing piece of work. Everybody gave a little, everybody recognized that the river was their most important asset. And they got together and they drafted the compact, and all but one of them signed it. Now, you may know already that the one that didn't sign it was our state, the state of Arizona, who didn't think they got enough out of the Colorado Compact. But you see on the map also the lower basin, Arizona, California, Nevada, and the upper basin, divided at Lee's Ferry. And the original compact gave 7.5 million acre feet to the upper basin and the same amounts to the lower basin. And then in 1944, they added the Mexican allotment of 1.5 million acre feet. You could do the math, that adds up to 16.5 million acre feet. Now here's the problem. The Colorado River in the time since 1922 has very seldom reached 16.5 million acre feet. Far more likely to be around 14, some years as low as 10. So let's just say that the very far-sighted people who drafted the compact were a tad optimistic. They were using geologic or hydrographic data that was on the high side. And we now know that what we're seeing now, which we call a drought, and it is a drought in terms of snowfall, is more in line with the average over the thousands of years that the Colorado's been running. Next. Okay, here's the lower basin. You see who gets what, and I said Arizona didn't sign, but finally we did come on board after a long lawsuit with California to determine that 2.8 million acre feet did not include the Gila, a very important river in the center part of Arizona, that if you'd taken the Gila flow out of our allotment, obviously we would have been much lower. So I think we did okay. We won that case. Don't ever let anybody tell you California did. But the total amount of lower basin allocation is on the screen. California's had a very hard time living in 4.4. They have much greater demands than that, and that's an issue for another day. We've been fighting with them from the beginning, from the dawn of time, practically, about water. Back in the days of the Arizona Navy, when Arizona officially put a rowboat in the water at Parker, and with a shotgun tried to keep the California engineers from building the first dams. But our 2.8 million acre feet was only fully realized when the CAP was authorized in 1968, then brought 1.5 million acre feet of that 2.8 into Central Arizona. Next slide. Okay, here are the 2 dams. This is it's the story of 2 dams. One is in the upper basin, Lake Powell, and one is in the lower basin, Lake Mead. And and you can see, especially on the one on the left, what we call the bathtub ring. That shows you very graphically how far Lake Powell has gone down. You can see the accumulation of sediment that literally leaves the bathtub ring on the shores of the lake. Next one. And here's what we call the bucket chart. This is something our board at CAP gets every month. And it has been an increasingly serious, you might even say dire story I've told the staff in no uncertain terms that they've got to improve the story. They've got to start filling those buckets up, and they have failed to do so. So I come to you hat in hand with a certain humility that we've not been able to increase the amount of water. And you can see that the whole adage about the glass being half full or half empty, this glass is on the way down. And those levels are of serious concern. The bucket chart also shows you, of course, that the upper basin has more than just Lake Powell. There are a number of other important lakes on tributaries that they have access to. We have just one. We have Lake Mead, and we need to make the most of it. And of course, we also have the Salt River Project. I don't want to leave that out. That is an independent source of water. It has its own salt and verde resources. And actually, in a time of drought on the Colorado, the salt and verde are doing pretty well. So it's good to be diversified in your portfolio. Next one. Okay, here's the story as clearly as we can get it. And it's very difficult to be clear on a subject like this. But what you see there is the level of Lake Mead. And what you see is where it has gone to today. And you see that in red, the DCP Tier 1, the 1075. That's sort of the magic number, because under the 2007 guidelines, and by the way, when the basin states realized the 1922 compact wasn't going to quite do the job, they got together and basically did some very hard negotiating in 2007 and did a basin, I guess we could call it an amendment to the Colorado Compact, which basically did some extra planning in the event of shortage. Well, here we have the shortage, and the first extra planning that is called for in that compact is the Tier 1 shortage. If come August, the Secretary of Interior says that it is likely that in the following year, the level of Lake Mead is going to be below 1075, then he has the option of declaring, and I believe really doesn't have much choice, of declaring a Tier 1 shortage. That's never happened before. We've been close. We've been within inches of 1075, but we've never actually fallen below it. Our estimates, and based on miserable runoff from the Rockies, from what such snow as we had last winter, shows that if you're betting on this, you better bet that there's going to be a Tier 1 shortage. We're ready for it. We know it'll be tough. But now the question is managing the message so that people don't believe Arizona's running out of water, because we're not. Next slide. Okay, here's how we've sort of looked at the priorities. And the most important thing to know about this slide is that it recognizes that there are levels of priority on the water from the Colorado River. And you can see the highest priorities are at the bottom of this chart, and the lower priorities are above that. And so the top one, and we've always known this, is the agricultural pool. If in time of shortage, they will take the first shortages. And the next one, the NIA, sort of mysterious numbers, stands for non-Indian ag. And they would be next in terms of priority. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what happens in the time of a shortage. The shortage is described with that arrow, and that arrow is right at our heart. 512,000 acre feet of shortage will hit in the event of a declared Tier 1 shortage to the CAP. Out of the 1.5 million acre feet that we get each year, 512,000 would be removed, would stay in the river. And so you see what's left. Indian tribal rights, which are very high priority, and the M&I or cities, which are similar priority, and a little bit of non-Indian ag. But we've been working to mitigate that. And then what you see on the right, we weren't quite done with this slide, is the after mitigation. You can see we were able, with some creative work and a lot of partnerships, to move more water into the higher column. So if you look at the line on the left, you can see where it would have gone with no mitigation. On the right, you can see that we're able to mitigate a substantial amount of water in the agricultural community, so that it's not quite the disaster or the complete cutoff that it would have been without that mitigation. Next. Okay, and here's how we deal with the Tier 1 shortage. And I put all the items up on the screen. You can read them yourself. I'm not going to go into each of the details. But I think the bottom line is very important. And it's the third dot point. High priority CAP water for cities and tribes is not affected, but we are all part of the solution. And if we go into the next slide, I think we'll see that it is very important to look ahead. It is very important to see this problem as a basin-wide issue that affects upper basin states who so far haven't taken any cutbacks, as well as those of us at the end of the chain down in the lower basin. And I can say a few things that are historic about what's happened with the beginnings of this, and I won't call it a crisis, the beginnings of this conundrum, the beginnings of this dilemma on water and Colorado River water in particular is for once in history, and I've seen a lot of it myself, we're working with California. I know that for many of you that may sound appalling or revolutionary or impossible. But actually, one of the good things about the DCP, the Drought Contingency Plan, which was the most recent agreement among the basin states, was that California, they had the 4.4 million acre feet that you saw in the earlier chart, has agreed if things get much worse than a tier 1 shortage, they'll put some of their water back in the river. That's really important. Nevada has made the same commitments. Mexico has come up with some of the same agreements in time of great shortage. So we are working together. The big challenge now is in 2026, and that's what's on the screen here. There will be a complete revision of the 2007 guidelines. That means the law of the river. That means the Colorado Compact will be on the table for reconsideration. We in Arizona, I think, are getting really prepared. The committee has been placed now. They've worked on the DCP and they're working on the reconsultation. And that means that we should have our act together long before 2026. In fact, you can see the timeline there. But it's still a big deal and it has to be sold to the entire basin, not just to Arizona. Next slide, please. So here's the ARC. We have acronyms for everything. And the ARC is starting, there's a meeting later this month to do the hard work of figuring out, okay, how do we deal with this? And one of the things that we'll probably have to do within the state of Arizona is look at the CAP users. Yes, they have the lowest priority based on the original congressional enactment to funded the CAP. But we have on-river users in Arizona also, big ones, Yuma farmers and the Colorado tribes. And we're all going to have to work together for the good of the state. And that's going to be a tough project because that's going to mean that some people's water that they considered absolutely firm maybe have to be whittled away a little bit. And then we have to work with the upper basin. And that is going to be the real challenge. The 4 states of the upper basin are used to having it pretty much their way. They want some new projects. And our message to them is that's all well and good, but you can see that the newest project, the CAP, is taking significant cutbacks. How are you going to get water for something else that's trying to take it out of the Colorado River? I don't see it. And I don't think you can do a lower priority than the CAP and expect to get something wet at the end of the day. Next slide, please. And here's where you get some more information. Again, I know many of you have this information in your subconscious already, but I do refer you, if you'd like, to the Central Arizona Project website. That is a plethora of good information. DWR, our partner in crime here, is been doing a great job of getting the word out and being transparent about what's happening with water's futures in Arizona. And the Bureau of Reclamation, of course, is our big boss. They're the master of the river. Finally, just to say, this is a problem. It's not a crisis, but it is a serious problem. And we need to look ahead to make sure that Arizona continues to have the water that you see here in this glorious canal flowing, not just next year, but for 100 years to come. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much. I did, yes, wonderful. I actually learned several new things. I certainly remember the CAP's inception, and it's in commercial real estate, this is a discussion every day, and certainly for places like Mesa, a lot of the large land purchases that are happening these days, this is the topic of conversation. What is our water situation? And so this was fantastic. Thank you. And so lovely to see you and have you do a presentation for Mesa. Do we have any questions for President Goddard?
Joan, I'll just throw out, Terry, thank you for the presentation. It was great having you as part of AMWA and chatting with us with our board the other day or a few weeks ago. But Terry's doing a great job at CAP. Trying to make sure that everyone is aware of what's coming, what's looming in the dark out there. Mesa, and I would like to say that all the cities in Arizona have done a tremendous job when it comes to water and water usage. And if you remember the crisis that California went through a year or 2 years ago, when you couldn't even get ice in a soda, much less water served at your table. And and if you go anywhere in California, they're running sprinklers, and they're just using water like crazy. And in Arizona, we really understand that water is gold, right? It's our equivalent to Texas oil, and we treat it as such. And so we are very cognizant of our water usage in the cities in Arizona, and that's one of the reasons why we've been able to do the things that we do and grow the way that we have, is because we're smart about the growth, and we work very, very well with CAP and SRP on water and the water issues. And so big thank you to Terry and CAP for all that they do, because without them, East Mesa at least would really be nothing but desert and totally dry. We wouldn't be able to survive out here without CAP. So thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Councilman Thompson, and I should say President Thompson, because you're the lead guy at the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. So we're having a summit.
I'm still Kevin. So everybody calls me Kevin, and so please just call me Kevin. But I Terry, I like the idea of using the canal banks, because I've often wondered if we would be able to do something like a San Antonio River Walk, and build around the canals. I'm not the runner. I'm not a marathoner. My idea of running is to get to the air-conditioned car as quickly as possible. But I think it'd be phenomenal to be able to have restaurants and different types of entertainment venues located along the CAP, just like they do in San Antonio. I think it'd be a big draw for our community.
You're so right. And I just think that the tragedy when we originally designed these water features was we turned our back to them, so that communities throughout Arizona, throughout the CAP and the SRP system, don't glorify something that's so precious, and that's the water. And I hope you're right. I hope that vision maintains in Mesa and elsewhere, because it is there. It should be a big part of our present and our future. But let me give a tip of the hat to AMWA, the Arizona Municipal Waters Association, that Councilman Thompson Kevin is the president of right now, because what I think we need, and this is a serious piece of coordination on message. We're going to get a tier 1 shortage. And the New York Times and the Washington Post and others are going to say, as a banner headline, Arizona is running out of water. Arizona is in drought. And our message has to be, no, we're not. We are in a desert. We, as the councilman has just said, we respect water. We use it frugally. We think we use it really well. Our ag community is as advanced as any part of the world in terms of its use of water. And our cities are doing an amazing job. Now, some like the fountains and Fountain Hills might be constrained a little more than they are, but that's you got to have the exception to prove the rule. But we need to be together, and AMWA has done a terrific job with a one-page statement of what the water situation is in Arizona, what we need to be concerned about, but what we need to be confident of. And let me just say again, I said it before, but Arizona should be really proud of the generations of advanced planning that have gone into today. Our forefathers and mothers have really done a good job of treating the water resource with the respect that it deserves. And that's why we can say it's not a crisis. We can say it's a hiccup. It's a step we have to go up. Certainly we'd rather not have 512,000 acre feet taken out of our allocation, but we can manage it because we planned for it. And I think for the industrial development community in particular, we've got to caution people not to pay any attention to the inevitable headline, because come August, when the secretary makes that declaration, there will be headlines and it will feel bad. And we have to be ready, hopefully now, to be in the field saying, here's what's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. Here's the real story.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. I appreciate very much with certainly the entire group, and appreciate you being here this morning. And we are going to wrap up today. Mr. Emmert, we interrupted you. Is there anything, President Goddard, Tammy, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your presentation. Yep.
Thank you.
Eric, anything else that you want to fill us in on happening at the state level? And then Jennings, I don't know if you're still around and wanted to say something, and then we will move on. Eric, did I lose you?
No, I'm here. Stand by for budget, Madam Chair. That's it.
Okay.
Joan,
Will do.
Joan, did you
Thank
see
you.
a comment in the chat from
Oh.
Jeff Mirasola?
Yes. So sorry. Is President Goddard still here? Yes. Jennings, if you've got a minute, don't go away. Mr. Mirasola from Lumens, is that the name of the company now? Asked about your opinion on the desalination plants in Rocky Point.
Well, very, very quickly, we're looking at every possible additional resource. One of the exciting things about this ditch, this canal that we built from the Colorado River to central Arizona, is that it can handle other resources. And so I've emphasized losing 500,000 acre feet from the Colorado River, but there are other options within the state of Arizona and in the basin that in fact could allow us to put additional supply into the into the CAP. So moving water around is going to be the name of the next decade and perhaps way beyond. One of the options is desal. It's a very expensive option, but it's one we're looking into aggressively, both off the coast of California and in the Gulf of Baja California, the Sea of Cortez. And so we think we don't want to leave any stone unturned. And so that you're going to read in the next few weeks and months about some other opportunities that we are aggressively pursuing, because we don't want to sleep on this. It takes a big desal program would take many years to bring to fruition. And it would involve an exchange. In other words, we would put desal water, for instance, into the country of Mexico. They would put their allocation from the Colorado River into our account, and then we could import it from the Colorado. So it's complicated, but it's one of the options that we're looking at, but it's not the only one. I have to say, if I've got one more second, that
Yes.
the legislature just said we should be importing water from the Mississippi River. And I want to emphasize, I don't want to leave any stone unturned, but that's a pretty wet stone and it's pretty hard to move. There are other things closer to home, including a huge, what we call brackish water supply in the western part of Maricopa County. I really want to focus on that because it doesn't take as much cash. It's there. We got some legal issues that have to be straightened out, as the ag people know well, but it's a closer to home source of a lot of water that's not being used right now. Thanks.
I could go on about this all day. I find
Yeah,
this whole topic
we all
totally
could, I'm afraid.
fascinating. So anyway, but again, thank you. Jennings, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today, and thank you. And is there anything that you want to add to today's conversation?
Sure. I mean, thanks for having me. And, you know, I think obviously the congressman covered a lot of the big issues going on in Washington, D.C. and a lot of the issues he's working on. I wouldn't want to say, you know, just thank you to the Mesa Chamber and to all of you for continuing to stay engaged on just kind of public policy issues at really every level, but particularly at the federal level. It really makes a big difference. And just wanted to stress too and highlight the fact that you all are in a great position to have somebody like Congressman Stanton, who is you know, very much a centrist Democrat, part of the New Democrat coalition, somebody that's earned our Spirit of Enterprise Award, for example, for his strong record in support of business. And then also to have Senators Sinema and Kelly, also two very centrist Democrats in the Senate. Those three members in particular are playing really kind of outsized roles in what's happening in Washington, D.C. because of how narrowly divided things are, with the House having essentially a 4 or 5 seat majority for Democrats, and then the Senate, of course, being completely split down the middle, 50-50. I don't have to tell you all the amount of attention that Senator Sinema and Kelly get on just about every issue that comes to the Senate, and why you all play such a big role in determining what ultimately happens. And they obviously listen very much to the business community, very much to the Mesa Chamber, So just want to thank you for your partnership and for your work on so many important issues. It really does make a massive difference. On some of the issues that the Congressman talked about, of course, infrastructure, that's our number one kind of legislative priority for this year. We continue to be hyper focused on. We are continuing to push for a large comprehensive infrastructure package that could pass before the 4th of July or sometime this summer, but that can be done on a bipartisan way. And so we're here, obviously that's a big priority for the Congressman, is to work in a bipartisan way, and we're happy about that. But then also when we're talking about funding infrastructure, it's good to hear kind of his remarks on the fact that if voters see that the money is being used in the right places, they're going to be willing to, and he could speak to from his experience as mayor, they're going to be willing to support, potential tax increases. And oftentimes we're thinking of kind of user fee based tax increases, right? So gas tax increases, we've seen this happen across a number of states throughout the country, where voters have supported that because they see the money going in the right place. And that continues to be a focus of ours when we're talking about how to fund infrastructure, looking at that user fee model so that the folks that are using the infrastructure are paying for it, and pushing back against raising corporate tax rates, increasing taxes on businesses, especially at a time when businesses can quite frankly least afford something like that as they come out of the pandemic. So that's a big part of our message, is that this bill has to be bipartisan, and that we can't put this burden on the backs of businesses that are just starting to now reemerge out of the pandemic and have a whole host of other issues, many of them now workforce related, as you all know, and then to increase taxes on top of them, now's not the right time. And so that, I think, needs to be our message. And it's good to hear the Congressman kind of talk about raising revenue the way that he did, because we think that a user fee model, I think, just makes a lot more sense on that front. And then, of course, thanks, Eric, for bringing up the PRO Act issue. I think that's something that, of course, Senator Sinema and Kelly have heard a lot about. We're going to need to continue to talk to them about the importance of staying off of that bill and not supporting that bill. And then if the bill does come back to the House, we'd love to continue that conversation with Congressman Stanton as well. Those are really the big issues that I just kind of wanted to briefly mention, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Questions? Well, thank you everybody for hanging in there. Went a little bit long, but I think well worth it. Great presentations this morning. Thank you for everybody's participation. Have a wonderful holiday over Memorial Day, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again in June. Thanks.
Stay connected to Mesa Chamber social media, email newsletters, Monday morning message, and mesachamber.org to always know what's happening at your Mesa Chamber.